Last week, the U.S. Census came out with a post-enumeration survey update where they found what they say were either undercounts or overcounts in various states. It was like 12 to 15 states, I think. Illinois was one of the states they say they undercounted by 2%, again, about 1.9 something percent, but either way, based off of post-enumeration survey data. And that was quickly heralded by Governor J.B. Pritzker and House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch as saying that Democrats aren't causing people to flee the state. Democrat policies are causing people to come to the states. They talked about how we're getting closer to 13 million people because the undercount represents about 250,000 people. But what's really going on here? Has anything changed? From my understanding, we still lost a congressperson in U.S. Congress because of the population decline that the state has experienced, not just from year to year for the past 8 years. And the U.S. Census data that came out last year that maps were based off of and that our congressional representation was based off of showed that we lost 18,000 people in the past 10 years. So what's going on here? Is this turning into some confusion and people maybe using that confusion for political means as we head into a November election? To talk more about this and to unpack it a bit, Wirepoints President Ted Dabrowski, he's been watching this closely, and he's got the team with himself and several others to really unpack these numbers and others. And Ted, you know, the U.S. Census data is one thing, but we've seen independent analysis elsewhere from moving companies and even analysis you guys have done of IRS data that shows outbound migration. What's going on here? Good morning.
Good morning, Greg. Yeah, there's no good data on the Illinois population and outmigration trends. They've all been negative, across the board. And so when this thing came out, it confused a lot of people. The IRS's small survey did a survey of 0.1% of all households in the country. And they do that after a census to kind of figure out, where do we make some mistakes? Where do we have to tweak our processes? So when I started hearing the celebration of 13 million population, I was like, well, is that true? And where is it? I went to the census website, show me that 13 million, and we couldn't find it. So we said, well, why don't we do the obvious thing? Let's call the census and ask them, what is the population of Illinois? And they unequivocally told us it's still 12.8 million. And what they also said is that, this small survey they did to determine some errors, they said you can't, it's a different survey. You can't say, well, 2% of Illinois' population that we said it was, last year in the census, you can't just add 250,000 and say that's the new population. Mathematically, she said it's incorrect. So from everything we can still see, the population is still 12.8 million. It holds that way obviously for the congressional seats, but it also stays that way in the census numbers.
So there's been no change in the official U.S. Census. This was really just a post-enumeration survey. A survey asking a small sampling of people various questions to then extrapolate and determine what they could do better in the census moving forward and so on. Ted, we've got other data, though, that, again, just indicates that we're losing population year after year after year. And it's not just census data. It's IRS data. It's moving company data. Walk us through some of the other points here that have indicated Illinois, even manufacturing jobs moving to other states. There's a lot of other data to point that Illinois is losing population faster than most other states that are losing population.
Yeah, you've had the U-Haul, the United Van Lines. You've got all those moving companies that show we're consistently number one or number two worst in net outflow of people. You got the IRS data, which I consider some of the best data because the IRS, they have our tax returns. They know exactly who we are, where we live, where we move to, how many kids we have. So they have the best hard data on where people are going. And there we are consistently the worst loser in the country. We compete with New York for the biggest losses of people and money every year. And so when you look at the birth data from the census, our births are going down and our deaths have been going up. So what they call the net natural increase, births minus deaths, are getting worse as well. So when you start to add it all up, it can't be good. And then, of course, you mentioned manufacturing, which is another big thing. We've done far far worse than all of our neighbors. They've all recovered their manufacturing jobs, and we've been far behind. So there's so many angles to this where we're really bad. But Greg, let me make one other point. Even if it was true, and we find out that the population did grow by 250,000 more, but let's give them that for a minute. We'd still be the 9th worst in the country in growth, population growth. Iowa would have grown 3.5 times more than us. Kentucky, 2.5 times more. Indiana, twice as much as we did. So all our neighbors are growing far more than we are, and we'd still be the 9th worst in the country, far behind all the leading states like Texas and Florida.
Ted, for months and years, actually, Republicans have been using census data and other data points, as you've laid out, from IRS to moving companies to highlight Illinois' outbound migration. And those were talking points that we heard a lot. And I imagine we'll hear moving into the election. But you've got the governor in a re-election campaign, and even Speaker Welch helping to try to get Democrats more favorability from voters. Do you feel that the governor and the Democrats' play on this is gonna be impactful for voters, or do you think that voters know their neighbors are moving out to other states and might see through this?
Yeah, I think anecdotally, of course, Pritzker and others can use it for gain. Why not? The census did say it, so they can just go out and say it, even though they didn't say 13 million. But the bottom line is that anecdotally, I think most people say, wow, we've got some of the worst crime in the country, not just in Chicago, but, we've reported on at Wirepoints, we reported on the Decatur numbers, the Rockford numbers. The numbers are bad everywhere you go. So the anecdotal evidence from that is bad. The highest property taxes in the nation, those continue to hurt people. The job prospects, we've got the highest unemployment rate in the region, and whatever it is, the 6th worst in the country. So the job prospects aren't good. There's so many negative things right now, not to mention, of course, Governor Pritzker's strictest mandates in the country among them. So there's a lot of negative things. Maybe a little population news might help, but I don't think it matters. I don't think most people pay attention to this number.
Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints. Again, you can find their research on a variety of different things, from economic analysis to population analysis and so on. Greatly appreciate you taking the time this morning. What else is big on your guys' table in the weeks ahead?
Well, we've of course got the primary coming, so we want to continue to tell people what matters. What I think should matter, and people should be looking at their candidates by seeing who's willing to talk about these high property taxes and precisely what they'll do, because I want to hear more precision on that. So we'll be talking about that more. Same thing on pension reform. It's basically not talked about. Never mind that it's the biggest debt in the country, and never mind it's behind all the problems we have in Illinois, at least the fiscal ones. We don't hear enough about that. We want to hear more specifics on crime. How do you stop crime, not just say that it's bad. So, there's quite a bit to cover in the next few weeks.
Ted, the website?
Wirepoints.org, and you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at Wirepoints. And we also have a daily newsletter that comes out. We curate and pick the news for you, so you don't have to go find it, and you'll see things that you won't hear otherwise. But, sign up for that as well. Greatly
appreciated, as always, and we'll connect again in the near future. Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints. Have a great morning, all right?
You too.
It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on WMA.